This is Michael Clara coming to you from Salt Lake City, Utah, with part 2 of Due Process for Natalie Cline. And this one is about, the subtitle is Utah School Board Association. And this is in relation to an incident that occurred here in Utah last month, where, and this New York Post headline kind of summarizes it, that Utah school board member faces calls to resign over post falsely suggesting teen girl was transgender. And I did a video on part 1, Due Process for Natalie Cline, and I focused in on the actions of the Utah State Board of Education, which she is a member of, and I focused on their actions and how they executed the due process, that in my analysis that they were the ones that had the power and authority to actually give Natalie Cline some level of due process. Also, in that part 1, I dispute how the Salt Lake Tribune summarized what happened. And after the state board issued their censure of board member Cline, the Tribune's title of this story is Natalie Cline cyberbullied and sexually harassed a student. USBE investigation found. Now, if I remember correctly, they did change the title of the story to be more accurate on an update of the story. But this part here, the censure resolution states, an internal investigation found that Cline violated administrative code, board bylaws, and board policy in 11 ways, and that the board formally disapproves of her conduct. I dispute that. There's nothing in the censure resolution didn't state anything about an internal investigation and the conclusions of that. But that's what part 1 is about. And so in part 2, what I wanted to focus on is the actions of, well, initially the actions of Granite School District. And what they did is this calendar here shows that on February 6th, I'm just trying to illustrate that board member Cline posted the Facebook post that everybody was upset about, and the governor and lieutenant governor here in Utah issued a statement the following day. And then on Thursday, other elected officials on the state level in the legislature issued statements in opposition or opposing or calling into question the Facebook post. And the USB leadership actually made a statement, but here I'm calling into question what was the purpose. As this was unfolding at the time, it was like, what is going on? Like, I didn't understand at the time, why would a local school board get involved in this and issue, actually call a board meeting. And not only did this local school board, the Granite School District, issue a resolution, as they say here, in reference to bullying and harassment by USB board member Natalie Cline, they said, we call on our colleagues from school boards throughout the state and other elected officials to do the same. And again, as this is unfolding and I'm watching this, I'm like, this is bizarre. First of all, I was impressed with how quickly the Granite School District could call a meeting and take official action on something. You never see government move that quick. And even more impressive, you have other school boards doing the same thing, moving quickly. The ones in red here are the school boards that actually did the same thing, issued resolutions. That I find it offensive. In my opinion, it's not even legal, because you have local school boards, and here's a graph that kind of shows, Natalie Cline is here, a member of the State Board of Education, and is elected. She's in District 9, and there's a number of people in her state district. We have 15 state school board members, so the state of Utah is divided into 15 geographic areas, each with their own representative from the State Board of Education. Then down here we have local school boards, and I think we have 42 or 43 right now. For example, I live in Salt Lake City, so the Salt Lake School District is the whole city of Salt Lake and part of Mill Creek is in that school district. And then you have the Granite School District that is just south of us, and it has several cities from Salt Lake County in it. However, it's just way out of the scope of a local school board's power and authority to be trying to influence a state election, which was just bizarre. And so one of the articles here, I'm just pointing out here that as this is going on, that like Channel 2 News reports that the Ogden School District issues a statement. It's like, wow. But it's in support of Granite that just did theirs at 4:30. So anyway, this story says 4:56. So, these and then here's a city council, Midvale does it. So these local government agencies, you'll never see them move that fast on issues, which is bizarre that they were doing it this night. But this is what I found later on. The Deseret News says late Friday night, the Utah School Boards Association, the Utah School Superintendent Association, and the Utah Association of School Business Officials issued a statement that said they stand in solidarity with Granite School. So anyways, that caught my attention. And then I looked on Twitter or X, what it's called today, and Facebook, and found public statements by other school board members from the Salt Lake School District saying that they voted in this, they called it a joint legislative committee. And then the following day, a school board member from Alpine, I think her name was Julie King, posted something on Facebook saying that she voted at the Joint Legislative Committee, which is a group that consists of these three associations. When I looked into it further, it's like, wait a second. So the Granite School Board meets at 4:30, and then afterwards the Joint Legislative Committee met. And when I look into it that night and the following day, that's not what happened. This Joint Legislative Committee actually met earlier in the day, prior to the School Board of Granite doing their thing that everybody. So what happens in the public eye, we see Granite School District calls for Board Member Cline's resignation and then tells everyone else to do it, and everyone else does do it. But that's not what happened. So from what I could tell, so I sent an email to the board president of Granite, and I just basically tell her, this is what this video is going to be about in the next few minutes. I said, I tell her, furthermore, it appears that I'm asking her about the culture of this Joint Legislative Committee, which they called the JLC, that it looks like they met earlier in the day, and that it was against that backdrop that the ubiquity of the school board mob against USB member Cline was spawned. I said, then later that day, it was really all a camouflage, the actions of the Granite School Board under the guise of every child deserves a safe educational environment, thus giving the appearance that other school boards spontaneously responded to the call to dehumanize and demonize USB board member Natalie Cline in the name of a safe educational environment, when in reality, under the leadership of Superintendent Nye, the JLC implemented a political provocations designed to maintain a cycle of polarization in our communities. So basically what I'm asking her is, did your Superintendent Nye, because he was involved in this, was he the one that was behind all this? And it's not what it appeared. Well, we exchanged a couple more emails. Then she kicks me over to her general counsel, Douglas R. Larson. And basically what he implies to me in our emails is that I'm not even a citizen of the United States. And I think he thinks that because I signed my emails. I don't think I have it here, but I signed my emails with un abrazo. Un abrazo is what I have in my signature line. And I think this general counsel got the false impression that I'm not a citizen of the United States. And that's why he says here, you have no standing to seek redress related to these issues. The other thing he accuses me of is I appreciate your persistent interest in defending board member Cline. And let me say here, I'm not defending board member Cline. What my argument is the abuse of power executed by these local school boards. And I was on a school board a decade ago here in Salt Lake City, and I was constantly the victim of their abuse going on, and I see that happening to board member Cline. That where you know, in other words, I don't have any problem with people criticizing board member Cline. In fact, literally at this time last year, I had no idea who she was. I knew she was on the board, but I really didn't pay much attention to what the state Utah School Board Board of Education was even doing. And so anyways, I started looking into this last summer at the way that I felt she was being abused by the government, by the forces of government. And here we have an example of it. So really, you know, I respect her after learning more about her and the way she's been mistreated. And this is one of those cases that really her mistreatment, in my opinion, serves as a backdrop to what's wrong with public education here in the state of Utah. And this would be a good example of it. The institutional hypocrisy, for example, of the Granite School District, of all the problems they have that are very public going on in their school district, they're going to take the time to call or make it appear that they're calling a special meeting. And then, you know, and that everyone else is following. It was all performative. And in my opinion, they really did a good job, like what do they call that in the CIA, a false, I don't know if it's a false flag or what, but they were, you know, trying to make it appear like this groundswell of opposition was happening, and that they were morally outraged by board member Cline's actions, when in reality, this was all political performance. I found out. And I kind of knew something was up when I get attacked just for asking a question, and where, you know, I become the victim by this attorney of what I would call bureaucratic bullying, of trying to demean me and belittle me for asking questions. And really all it's designed is to keep secret their actions. But you know what, that kind of stuff, I'm immune to that. That doesn't work on me, because then what I did is, you know, in a way to kind of demonstrate to him, he can say that because I'm not a citizen, he thinks I'm not a citizen, that I have no standing to seek redress. Well, let's see how that works. So I submitted a number of records requests to districts that had board members that were involved in this incident, and I'll tell you what I found out. But I want to explain first, before I go into what the results were of those records requests. I think it's important to point out the players in this, and why I made a special showing of the influence and the role that the Utah School Boards Association played in all this. We have here in Utah, you have the Utah School Boards Association. These three are actually, in my opinion, involved in an incestuous relationship. And I'll explain why as we move along here. But Lexi Cunningham, who's the executive director of these three groups, and then you have Christy Sweat, who I served on the board in Salt Lake City. Christy Sweat is still a member of the board in Salt Lake City today, and I served with her. And what I want to, you know, I may not say it again here in this video, but what I want to, my opinion is, these two are the worst role models that we could ever have about how board members in the state of Utah should be carrying out their duties. And this is, I believe, you know, the problem here in the state of Utah, that these are the kind of role models we have. And then we have local school board members teaming up with these two, you know, very poor excuses for, how board members should behave. So back in 2016, I was on the board in Salt Lake City, and we were having a number of issues with Superintendent Mikhail Withers, and he's probably, in my opinion, one of the biggest factors, that has influenced the culture of public education for the worse. And here you have Christy Sweat, who was on the board with him and learned from him. And he's a master of deceit. And these guys had a power inversion, if you will, where Christy that although in the state of Utah, a superintendent is hired by the school board, Christy Sweat acted like when she was on the board, well, she still is on the board, she acted like she worked for Mikhail. And that was a large part of the conflict that was always going on when I was on the board. It is just the Mikhail acted like the board members who actually hired him worked for him, and Christy Sweat and the rest of the board went along with that. I did not. Mikhail Withers ends up leaving, retiring, and he says publicly it was because of me, which is fine, and that was the intent. Then we hired the Lexi Cunningham, and we were deceived into hiring her. I'm not going to go into all the details here, but anyways, so I'm familiar with how cunning Lexi Cunningham is. And again, I'll tell you how she became the executive director of these associations. So anyways, I'm not on the board anymore. And a year or two later, she ends up resigning, is what the headline says, when in reality, she got fired. The idea was hopefully we get rid of her, but we don't, because Christy Sweat uses her influence at the Utah School Boards Association and gets her a job up at the Utah School Board Association. But again, she's not only that, she ends up being the executive director because these three institutions, and I have them right here, or they put their logos together, is the Utah School Board Association and the superintendents and the business administrators. So if you're not aware, those are the two hires of a local school board. So out of the 42 or 43 school boards that we have in the state of Utah, each of them by law are required to hire a superintendent and a business administrator every 2 years. And the association is under the same roof of these three. So that's why I say it's an incestuous relationship to, number one, I believe, have these three under the same roof, and they all share the same executive director. And basically what I saw is like people like Mikhail Withers, actually they manipulate the whole training, like what a school board member gets trained on and what we're told and the whole culture. So the very people that local elected school board members hire are actually kind of directing the affairs on how they get trained and what the culture is and what their understanding is of how public education should be operating. And here you have the superintendents. This year, the president is Kate Douglas from Sevier School District, and Rich Nye from the Granite School District are in the Superintendent Association, which are partners with under the same roof with the Utah School Boards Association. So going on to the USBA, Utah School Boards Association, and Christy Sweat. She is today, again, I served with her on the board of Salt Lake City, and she was horrible, just ridiculous, and one of the most incompetent, probably the most incompetent public official or elected official that I've ever met. But she ends up being today, she is the president of the National School Boards Association. And this is why I kind of grouped them all together in this graph to just show how ridiculous this relationship is. For those of you that don't know, a couple years ago, the National School Boards Association made headlines because during COVID, As this headline says, White House actively engaged with National School Board Association before domestic terror letter memo. And Christy Sweat was one of the, I think she was the secretary treasurer at the time of the NSBA, the National School Boards Association. And so anyways, we'll talk more about that and her role in making sure that parents, as this article says here, that the feds would investigate outspoken parents likening them to domestic terrorists, an internal memo reveals. Christy Sweat was at the center of that. But so those are just, I meant to be a lot briefer, but that's the introduction to those characters. And let me tell you what I found out, what role they had in this condemnation that was happening of Board Member Cline in terms of the school boards. So just by way of review, on February 6, 2024, this is what Board Member Cline posted on Facebook, girls basketball. And this is the extent of it on Facebook. That's what she did. And then because of the comments that people made on the Facebook page, she took it down and she apologized for even posting it because of she says here it created a firestorm. And so nevertheless, in spite of that, the governor issues a public letter statement condemning what she did, and as I already showed you, these other state elected officials, and as did the USBE, the Utah State Board of Education leadership. So here are the results of when I told you earlier, pointed out that when I asked questions of the Granite School District and I get this pushback, I did multiple grammar requests, and I still haven't received a lot of the. I'm still waiting for some replies for some other school districts. However, I could piece together what my suspicions were confirmed, that this was all performative against Board Member Cline. And what I found out was that on Thursday, February 8th, it was already scheduled. There's this Utah School Boards Association Day on the Hill. So what that means is that a number of the local school board members and state school board members were already going to be at the Capitol on Thursday. On that day, on Thursday, this is public, and watch the times here at 11:01, you have the Utah State Board of Education issue a public statement. And the following week, they're going to end up doing or voting as a 15-member board, and I think Natalie Cline was not there, but they're the ones that end up the following week issuing censure on Board Member Cline. But the point I want to make here is that early on, that this Facebook post happened on Tuesday. 3 days later, you have her own board, her own leadership saying that they are concerned and that here the board has no power or authority to unseat an elected official. If the full board determines discipline is warranted, board bylaws provided guidelines for additional action. So they're just saying, hey, we're doing an investigation and we're on this. And that so they moved pretty quickly on this and let the public know. And I like here that they're unequivocal that they will be taking prompt action regarding this matter as determined by the full board. And I'm not mocking that. I'm actually saying, look, this is what these guys did. And to their credit, this is what they did, and they made a statement. Because in my analysis, they were the only ones by law that had the power and authority to investigate the behavior, to utilize government resources to investigate the behavior of Board Member Cline and make a determination through due process, meaning that there's allegations, that Board Member Cline gets notified of the allegations, gets an opportunity to respond, and then the rest of the board, acting as fact finders, make a determination based on the evidence, the allegations, the evidence, and her response. And they tell us at 11 a.m., on Thursday, that's exactly what they're going to do. However, a couple hours later, there's a meeting of the USBA Board of Directors meeting, and it has 23 members. But they met, and I do know through the records request and the results of that, here you have the president of the USBA, the Utah School Board Association. She said that USBA asked for all school boards and districts in the state to support Granite School Board in their call for the immediate resignation of Board Member Cline. So a couple hours later, I have there's a text message where, following that Board of Directors meeting by the Utah School Board Association, the president of Granite actually sends out what the resolution is going to say. And she says, we'd like to release a statement from the board. I want to let you have the opportunity to add your voice to this if you want to. So she's telling her board, which is 7 members here in the Granite School District, that this is the resolution and they can add their voice to it. And here one of them says, I want to talk to you about this. So later on then, this is public. The Salt Lake Education Association makes a public statement against Board Member Cline. The UEA, the Utah Education Association, demands her resignation. And then at 3:19, the Granite School District posts, because under the Utah Open Meetings Act, you have to let the public know that you're going to have a meeting, and you have to notify the public 24 hours before, which is what they do here. Well, you get a notification that the meeting's going to happen, but if you see this agenda, you'd have no idea what it's about. Board resolution. That's it. But again, I'm showing you that everybody else knew about it except the public wouldn't know. So this is kind of an outline I did just to show you a timeline outline up to this point. And then we'll move on to the rest of the afternoon. But the thing I want to point out is that the USB leadership made a statement that they're doing an investigation. In spite of that, these people are going to move forward to work outside the bounds of their legal authority and going to work on doing a statement on Board Member Cline, but pretend that it comes from the Granite School District first, and then everyone else is following. And that's, which to me is very deceptive and just illicit behavior. Here you have one. I saw several of these, but here's because he's the president-elect for the USBE, and that's not right. It should be the USBA, the Utah School Boards Association. He's the president-elect, and he's just telling his board at 3:47. So even the day before Granite has even done anything, he just says that the Granite School District will meet tomorrow to demand the resignation of Board Member Cline. So understand that he already knows what the resolution from Granite is. He knows that what they're going to do, but the public doesn't. All the public knows is that a resolution is going to happen, but everybody else knows, what's happening. Then you have the Granite Education Association clearly knew what was going on because they solicited. I think they ended up having 300 people at the meeting. And a lot of it is because it was the best kept secret that this was going to happen. Then this really weird thing occurs that I'll elaborate on a couple more times in this presentation. But you get the Granite, and I guess I don't know if I pointed this out, the student or the basketball game and the students, the high school that Board Member Cline posted about is from the Granite School District, which I understand then their interest in it. I don't understand their reaction to it, because here, especially, you have on Thursday, which again, this is the afternoon and the morning. We already know that the Utah State Board of Education is promptly, they said, and reacting to this Facebook post and doing an investigation. But here you have, again, to me, it's just performative. I think that they did not anticipate that somebody would do a grammar request and go back and look at and put this on a timeline and see what they were up to. But here he says, he sends this to the Utah State Board of Education leadership. Please see attached document for formal request regarding actions associated with board member Cline. So basically what he does is he sends them a backdated letter. Even though he sends this email on the 8th, he sends them a backdated letter on the 7th. And I'm guessing to make it look like he asked them to do an investigation on Wednesday, and on Thursday they did it. They started it because of his request, which in reality, the investigation was already going on. He knew that. We all knew that. But, here it is, him, trying to be noble and ask for an investigation that was already happening. And here's another one of those emails that she's the USBA president, but she's sending an email to her board, and a number of these people that were at the USBA board of directors meeting did the same thing, sent emails to their particular boards, their local boards that they're associated with or that they're on. And she says, I'm not sure how many of you have heard of the very public shaming and bullying of a young woman athlete from the Granite School District experienced at the hands of board member Cline. And the reason I'm saying that kind of in a mocking tone is because that hasn't even been determined yet, what it is. And again, this is why I'm talking about due process. And these boards, local boards, have policies about what due process is. They would get sued if they treated an employee like this. And this is a big issue that local boards have to deal with. I dealt with employee issues all the time when I was on the board, but I would never go talk about them or render judgment publicly before due process was carried out. And I certainly would never say anything about a board member or about someone from another jurisdiction. But these people are just unhinged. So she, asked her board, and they end up, you'll see here in a second, saying, oh yeah, let's do it. Let's be part of it. Then here you have Lexi, who in my opinion is kind of the Oz behind the curtain running everything. So she's just telling them that we got to be ready for the meeting tomorrow. And then it appears that Granite School District, for whatever reason, issued a media release that they requested an investigation of board member Cline from the Utah State Board of Education, which, to me is it's just part of the performance and the deception. So this is an outline of the whole day that I just went over. And again, you can see here that at 11 a.m., when the leadership from the Utah State Board of Education says they're doing an investigation, there's really no need for all this other stuff. I mean, if associations want to make statements, that's fine. But then to be, working under the cloak of darkness and arranging a public meeting and that everyone else is going to get on board with it and stuff after, it's just ridiculous. And to say, hey, let's do an investigation, requesting an investigation that's already in process. So that's just, on Thursday. On Friday, the following day, you have the board president of the USBA, the president of the USBA, saying that her board in Cache County to add their name, that she's not going to be at the meeting today. So now there's going to be another meeting. And that other meeting that she's not going to be at, but she wants Cache County to be on board with it, is they have this joint legislative committee meeting that was already going to meet. And it consists of these three incestuous associations that Lexi Cunningham is the executive director over all three. And you see here, there's an agenda. I was able to get a copy of an agenda through the records request. And it says right here, granted resolution. So again, the day before everybody knows about these elected board members know about the granted resolution, they discuss it again in this meeting with and they all know about it, but the public doesn't know. Interestingly enough, talking about due process, at 1:30 p.m., The Tribune reports that just after 1:30 on February 9th, and this article just came out last week or this week, I think, or last week, the Tribune, through their own records request, is saying that they have an email that was timestamped February 9th at 1:30. So I stuck it in here. And basically what they're saying is that the Utah State Board of Education is going through their due process as outlined in their policy. And now they're asking the quote unquote accused to respond to the allegations. And I think that's significant here to just demonstrate that you have these local school board members accusing Board Member Cline and making judgments on her, saying that her wrongdoing and putting attaching conclusions and labels to it, when the people that actually have the power and authority to do that are just got around to asking her for her side of the story. A couple hours later, the Jordan School District at 4:10 p.m. actually posts an agenda saying that a resolution regarding Utah State School Board of Education member Natalie Cline. And what's funny about this is that the Granite School District hasn't even had their meeting yet. But these guys are going to post on their agenda, at least post that they're going to do this the following Tuesday, I think, that they're going to support the resolution by Granite. But they actually put that out there on their agenda a little early. Another interesting piece of information I ran across that I believe is pretty significant is that following that JLC meeting with those three, and there's a number of correspondence that I got that gives a pretty good insight about what happened at that meeting. And by the way, Christy Sweat was there from the Utah or from the National School Board Association, but she's still part of the USBA. So, but this is an interesting exchange from the two co-chairs, and this is on a text message, and you have this board member just thanking the superintendent from the other, or Kay Douglas, for helping her, I guess, preside at the meeting and exercise some parliamentary authority. And she tells him here that as a result of the JLC having a discussion and approving, I guess, the Granite resolution that they were going to do later on that night, that she says that one of her board members, I just got a scathing text from one of my board members, meaning from the Davis School District, who's angry about the Natalie Cline thing. She thought we were treating Natalie Cline unfairly and targeting her. She is far right, but I still can't believe what she said. So to me, this is the problem here that these associations are implementing, and it's the recurring theme about identity politics. That's what their aim is. That everybody has to be in a category. And so, you can't just have a conversation and disagree and make policy and deliberate. You got to start putting everybody in categories. And that's what this identity politics that's being perpetuated by Lexi Cunningham and as you'll see, Christy Sweat, who's a master of it. And that's where these local school board members are learning these targeting tactics of identity politics. You saw the attorney from the Granite School District do it. And that, to me, it seems to be something that's prevalent within the culture of public education here in the state of Utah. You don't typically see school board or city councils or county councils or state legislators doing that, but you see on the school board level, this is how they treat people. It's all about, somebody's political identity, and everything is boiled down to that, and that's how they view people. To me, which is even more alarming here, is she says that that she's going to, I'll have to share it with you and Lexi later, because in her mind, she reports to Lexi and to the superintendent, who is the president of the Superintendent Association. And to me, that's just upside down. It erodes the checks and balances that were intended here for public education in the state of Utah, and there's really no place for it. in my opinion. And to me, that is the root cause of a lot of the problems that we see in education here in the state of Utah, that you have local school board members like Bridget Gerard who think they report to somebody as incompetent as Lexi Cunningham and to another superintendent from a school district in southern Utah. It's just bizarre. And by the way, Davis School District has their share of problems that they shouldn't be acting like the moral authority on anything. And this, I'm just showing here that the interesting thing is that the Granite School District posts an agenda on this webpage for public notification, but then when you get to the meeting, there's a different agenda that shows that they're actually going to take action. Either way, if you're in the public, you don't know what's happening by reading the agenda. This is the resolution that they put out that night, and then you have Lexi Cunningham pretending that now we're all going to get behind this, which, they're the ones that actually, in my opinion, spawned the whole thing. But from the public standpoint, they're going to act like, oh, now we're going to get behind the Granite School District, when this is all performative. This was already it's a deception that was already all planned out. So here I want to point out just, here's the timeline in a different format of what happened. You had this JLC meeting prior, and you have Jordan School District actually posting on their agenda that they're going to support Granite School District resolution that hasn't even happened yet. But, so they kind of tripped up on their performance here. So I'm just showing here, these are the school districts, the local school districts that I could find that in one form or another actually called for board member Cline's resignation, which to me, in my opinion, that's inappropriate, because the local school board doesn't have any authority over somebody above them on the state level. So here you see, this is where board member Cline serves on the State Board of Education. And these local school boards by law are really subservient to the State Board of Education, and they have to follow. You have the legislature that makes the laws. The governor signs legislation into law, and then the state board, through rules, implements those laws to the local districts. But here we're upside down. Or another metaphor or analogy would be the tail wagging the dog, when you have these local school boards thinking that they have the power and authority and use the name of their school or their board and their school district to influence the outcome of an election on the state level. And to me, that's wrong. In closing, I want to go back to the National School Boards Association and point out that in this story here, on June 16, 2022, it says that half of the states have left the association, and but Utah remained. And then as early as this year, there's an ex posting of this Christy Sweat, who's on the Salt Lake Board of Education, but she's the president of the National School Board Association, but also on the board of directors of the Utah School Board Association. This says there's only 14. So there's only 14 states, and Utah is dumb enough to still be one of them, that participate in the NSBA. In essence, Christy Sweat, who, in my opinion, participated and presides over a defunct National School Board Association, we're allowing her to run around here in the state of Utah and influence things, and influence policy and state elections here in the state of Utah, which we're just dumb to do that. We're suckers, and we actually then deserve to have to be victims of her deceptions and her illicit behavior, because we're not doing anything to stop it. So this is just, I'm not going to go into detail about it. I actually think I made a video on her last year about this, but basically this was the letter that the NSBA National School Board Association back in 2021 wrote to the White House, and then it resulted in the Department of Justice issuing a memo that saying that they're going to investigate parents that disrupt school board meetings, and then each of the areas, the U.S. Attorney Generals actually initiated meetings with local law enforcement throughout the United States. But quickly, we had and this is just one of the emails that they did a FOIA request, which it was a parent group did a Freedom of Information Act request, and this is the email and it's quoted in lawsuits and stuff, where Christy Sweat on October 6th, after she's saying that the letter that the NSBA wrote to the White House was actually Secretary Cardona of the U.S. Department of Education was the one that asked for the letter. And again, it's a performative thing. It's the very thing they're doing here in Utah. This is what they did. They made it appear that the Justice Department was reacting to the President, Biden, to investigate parents who were disrupting meetings, when in reality, it was the National School Board Association still. So the interesting thing I just want to point out here is that on October 18, 2021, literally a month after this starts happening, a number of attorney generals throughout the states, and Sean Reyes is part of it. So the Utah Attorney General, Sean Reyes, is a part of this lawsuit where, and letter basically, Biden administration was trying to withhold some documents as to how everything went down, and then you got the attorney generals through various states, including Utah, suing. But Utah, our state board of education and our local school districts remain members of the National School Board Association, one of 14 states, even though our own attorney general is suing the federal government for documents about the role that NSBA played with the Department of Justice. And like the letter here says, that the association is asking, and they're saying that the NSBA had asked the administration to use the Patriot Act, a law that this Congress passed and has repeatedly reauthorized, primarily to stop the threat of Islamic jihadists to bring criminals charges for domestic terrorism against parents who attend school boards to oppose things like critical race theory or mask mandates, resulting in a recess being called. And he goes on this letter. And again, this is a letter that was also signed by the Attorney General from the state of Utah, Sean Reyes. But and this is the tactic that they use, that Christy Sweat was a part of, to demonize parents, to villainize them as terrorists, and that we got to get rid of them. So this is a thing I found just researching this, that on November 1st, so understand that this is in October, where we're acting, and our Attorney General with others is acting, and then you have taking action, and then you have the following month, you have somebody on Aaron Bullen's Facebook page, questioning, basically saying what I'm saying. Why is Utah still part of the NSBA? And you have these short-sighted member, Stacey Bateman, on the Alpine School District, actually defending the NSBA in light of all that I just pointed out, and why we're still in it, and they don't have any influence on us or anything, which is a lie. I just showed how they had influence, and they were the ones, Christy Sweat, under her illicit leadership, is the one teaching our local school board members. This is Becky Hope. I don't know who she is, but she actually goes in April to the Utah State Board of Education and says we shouldn't be part of the NSBA. And I don't think it was this meeting, but there was a meeting, I think, that happened in November of that year, or maybe it was last year, where Randy Booth, who is on the BE, Utah State Board of Education, defends Utah's right to be a part of the National School Board Association. And he says, and Christy Sweat from our own state is going to be the president, and that we should stay with the NSBA. Well, Christy Sweat, that's ridiculous. Christy Sweat is the one that did all that mess I just pointed out. And here again, I want to say, you have this board member Chandler that night at the Granite School District says that it makes more of a spectacle of our student for a longer time. And so I don't believe it's actually helpful. She was right. To all this stuff that they did, board member Chandler was talking about what Granite did. I don't think she was aware that this was all performance, that they had planned all this prior in the USBA Board of Directors meeting on Thursday, spilling over to the Joint Legislative Committee with the superintendents and business administrators on Friday, and that, this was just for show. So in closing, let me just say here, back when I was on the Board of Education, I went to the legislature to discuss some issues with them, and when Christy Sweat was a board president, she writes a letter to the legislature telling them that I didn't have permission to be there, nor the authority to be there, and that backfired on them, because then the leadership of the Utah School Boards Association goes to the legislature and tells them that I'm a rebel, and that I'm disobedient, that I didn't have the authority to go there. And they said because the school board is a body corporate. Well, the late Becky Lockhart, who was the Speaker of the House at the time, had this law passed that says that, okay, you can be body corporate, and she disagreed with them. And so did other members of this education task force, said no, a local school board member is an elected official. They can go talk to whoever they want. So they put this in the law to clarify it to the national or to the Utah School Board Association. And they said, notwithstanding a local board's status as a body corporate, an elected member of a school board serves and represents the residents of the local school board member's district. And that service and representation may not be restricted or impaired by the local school board member's membership on or obligations to the local school board. So I just put that up there to remind us that's what we should be doing as local school board members, is looking out for our constituents and bringing to the board, the local school board, what the issues are of those that elected us, not answering to the likes of Lexi Cunningham at the and to Superintendents Association and to the Utah School Boards Association. So what I'm saying is, in the National School Board Association, that right now all these local board and these board members that have participated in trying to affect the outcome of the election of Natalie Cline, you're wrong. You have sold out your own community, and you shouldn't be answering at the expense of your own community, doing the bidding of the likes of Christy Sweat and Lexi Cunningham. And I think in the coming, you'll look back on this and think, at one point, what was I thinking? Because you look dumb. All of you do. Following these two, Christy Sweat and Lexi Cunningham. Because what Natalie Cline did, she said that she was wrong. She took it down, and the Utah State Board of Education took care of it through due process. And by the way, ask yourself, why didn't the legislature do an impeachment? Because they recognize that if you follow due process and you accuse board member Cline or whatever you want to accuse her of, she's going to have the right to have counsel and to respond to the allegations, and I think even to call witnesses. And they knew that it wouldn't pass that kind of scrutiny, so they didn't go through with it. And you guys on the local boards, you knew that you could call a meeting or not. You could, and if you call the meeting and you don't allow for public comment, you're insulated. You knew that you could make accusations against board member Cline, who's above you and on the state level, and nobody would question it. And if somebody like me did question it through email, well, then you just get your attorney to try to insult me and belittle me and to bully me, which it didn't work. So anyways, that's my analysis of part 2 of due process for Natalie Cline. Stay tuned for part 3 coming out next week.